Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here, and I have some good news. If you've watched some of my last Warhammer Fantasy Battle reports, you know that we were talking about setting up a Warhammer campaign, a small escalation campaign. Well, the good news is that we are doing it. A friend in our group has set up all the rules. We've done similar campaigns like this, and they follow a certain pattern. So this one is kind of something that we've done before, but he's put his own spin on it. He's made his own scenarios. I'm really happy about this. I think he did a great job. The general idea is that it's an escalation game. So we're going to start off at a very low points level, 400 points in this example, and we're going to go up every 2 months. We're going to play about every 2 months, and we're going to play everyone in the group. There's only 3 of us, so we should be able to get all our games in. And so every game day that comes after that, our armies get a little bigger. We do a special scenario for every game day. So we're doing a scenario called Back to the Basics for this one. I'll get to that in a little bit. And so the next one will be a different scenario. The next one will be a different scenario. And there are little bonus points that we get for every game day. You get a certain number of points for having so much of your army painted. You get a certain number of points for getting a win, so many points for getting a loss. There are also some special ways to get points in the course of a game. If you do particular things, then you can get a couple points. And all these points can be used in the last battle. So the very end battle will be a big multiplayer battle. We'll get to use all our points for the various things, all the special rules that we've accumulated in the course of this campaign. And the winner of that final battle will be the winner of the campaign. So I have left a link to the campaign packet, which our intrepid player has put up, and so you can actually go and you can download that and you can see what the kind of thing that we're doing. So again, we've done this sort of thing before. We know it works. I'm really excited about this. Let's get straight to it. So first thing first is that the scenario that we're going to be playing is called Back to the Basics. The only special rule for this is that you have to spend 75% of your points on core troops, and I think that's a great way to start. 400-point games, they get really disbalanced if you bring in certain special troops, so I think that's a good way of doing things. Anyway, the next decision I had to make was which army I was going to use. Now, for those of you who've seen some of my last battle reports, you know I have a freshly painted small Vampire Counts army, and I was really tempted by some other things. I had the Empire, I had the Skaven, I had Ogres. I went with the Vampire Counts. I want to get a little bit more usage out of these guys. I want to grow that army a little bit and see what they're like. So I'm going to show you a picture of the force that I'm going to be using now. This is my Angels of Morr army. Anyway, I've got my level 1 Necromancer, Ethrac Crowfather. Now, one thing about this campaign is that you kind of have to keep your army similar from game to game. Between like the first scenario and the second, you're allowed to swap out 100 of your points, which means that 300 of points of your first list you have to use in your second list, and so on and so forth. So it lends a little bit of consistency here. So, even if these guys might not be great now, maybe they'll grow a little bit, whatever. Anyway, my level 1 Necromancer is Ethrac Crowfather. He has been given the Ruby Ring. My last game that I played, I made him a level 2, and I thought that didn't give him much threat. He was pretty good at having defensive stuff, but if he's not in a position where he wants to have things move or regrow or things like that, then he didn't have a lot to do. Plus, giving him the Ruby Ring, besides having this offensive spell that he can now throw around, it also means that he's 10 points cheaper. And one of his spells won't blow himself up if he miscasts. So I like that idea. Anyway, behind him we have the Dwellers Below. That's 20 ghouls. I dropped the champion in that unit, so I needed to save a couple points. Then I have a newly painted unit here. I have the Doom Hunters. These are 10 skeleton warriors with a champion and musician. What I determined from my last game is that I needed a bunker unit to keep the Necromancer safe. He couldn't wander around on his own because he'd just get blasted or shot or something like that. And he couldn't go in a combat unit because then he would just get killed in hand-to-hand combat. So I needed a little group of undead minions to follow him around and just keep him off of the main fighting line. Now, zombies would have been better, but it was not going to be possible for me to paint 20 zombies in the amount of time that I had. I could paint the remainder of the skeletons that I had and get this small unit of skeletons going. So that's what we have. If you'll notice, these are the old Cursed Company models. They were a Dogs of War unit a couple editions ago. It was a mercenary regiment with skeletons from all different species in the Warhammer world. And so what I've done is over time I've been collecting the orc skeletons, because my main army is orcs and goblins. And so I wanted a whole unit of skeletons that were just orc skeletons, and I mostly have that. I have to have the one champion, Dogs of Rule Rules. He's like a human kind, and then I've got the goblin drummer, which is just fine. I think that makes sense. Anyway, I'm really pleased with those guys. Hopefully they'll get bigger as time goes on. Then I have cut back on the number of dire wolves that I've been bringing, and I only have the 5 dire wolves. Those are the grim omens there. So here we see a picture of the battlefield right before we start. I'm going to quickly go over my opponent's list right now because I didn't take a separate picture of it. He is playing Orcs and Goblins, which is awesome. One of my favorites. Anyway, he has brought a Goblin Warboss. So that is the Lord level character. It's totally doable at very small points levels of games to bring a Goblin Lord level character in this. So this is his Warboss. They're really good at this. If you can get over like Leadership 8, which most armies aren't going to have many options. They're going to be Leadership 8 regardless. So it's not that big of a drawback. Anyway, he's got 3 wounds. He's got 4 attacks. He's Strength 4, Toughness 4. He's good. He's 65 points. So this is a good choice on my opponent's behalf. Anyway, he's accompanied by 30 Night Goblins. They have spears, shields, and 2 fanatics. He has got 10 Savage Orcs. They're not big guns, but they do have the additional hand weapons, no command. He's brought a single Troll, ordinary guy. And then he's got 5 Goblin Wolf Riders. They have shields, spears, and a boss. So as you would expect for a smaller game, we are using a shorter board. It's 4x4 as opposed to 6x4 or 8x4. Anyway, the terrain we've got a number of hedges, we have a normal building in the middle, and we have a charnel pit. So my opponent got to place a piece of terrain first, and he did not want that pit anywhere close to him. It gives my guys like regeneration 6+, and it subtracts from his leadership. So he thought that was a priority to get that thing out of here. So that's tucked away in the corner and not going to have much of an effect on the game. You can see my deployment. I'm down there on the bottom. I've got my ghouls on the left, my skeletons in the middle, my necromancer is in there, and the grim omens are off on the right. My opponent has put his night goblins a little bit further back. His savage orcs are behind that building, sort of at an angle. His wolf riders are over on the right, and that is his troll there in the middle. Before anything else happens, I get to vanguard up. So I get the opportunity to vanguard first, so my direwolves kind of charge forward. He decides not to vanguard his wolf riders, which is probably a good idea. So I go ahead and I take the first turn. I can't charge with my dire wolves on the first turn because I vanguarded. So I might move them around a little bit, I might not. Anyway, the rest of my guys are going to charge forward. We're going to get right into this. My skeletons are aimed straight at that building. I intend to move them directly into that building. I think that would be a good safe place for my necromancer and his bodyguard to hang out. We'll find out if I'm right about that. For my magic phase, I don't get anything off. My opponent manages to dispel the ruby ring. For those of you who know Warhammer Fantasy, you know what you really want in your magic phases is you want kind of even numbers. You want like 2 3s or 2 4s or something like that. That gives you the widest advantage to your dice, to your opponents. What I was doing in this game was I was doing a lot of 6 1s and stuff like that. So my opponent had a lot of dispel dice, and I wasn't able to capitalize on my spells a lot of rounds. So in my opponent's movement phase, his Goblin Wolf Riders, I believe, failed Animosity and had to declare a charge against my Dire Wolves. They didn't make that charge, and so they just moved forward a short amount. In further moves, his Troll moves a little bit further up, as do his Savage Orcs. They kind of stomp over that hedge in the middle, and everyone just kind of cautiously advances. In my turn, I go ahead and I charge my Dire Wolves into his Wolf Riders that have moved a little bit closer. They managed to make that charge. This isn't a fantastic arrangement for me. I was feeling pretty confident. I thought, okay, Wolf Riders, Dire Wolves can handle these guys. They cause fear. They have Strength 4 on the charge. Then it's not really the case. The Wolf Riders cost a fair number of points more. He's got a champion. They have a 4-up armor save, and they have twice as many attacks. So while it's possible I could get lucky here and really do some damage, the odds are that these dire wolves are not up to the task, and so that I'm eventually going to lose them. But we'll see how it goes. Here is maybe a more questionable thing. So those Savage Orcs moved up, and those Night Goblins are in a flanking position. So I have a choice. I can hold back and I can use my magic and I can make him come to me and all that kind of thing. or I can just charge those ghouls right in there and make this game like a big mess right away. The smarter play would have been for me to move back. He doesn't have any magic, he doesn't have any real shooting, doesn't have any shooting. So I've got time. I've got all the time in the world. I can hang out and let him come to me. That's not what I do. I go ahead, I say, you know what? Let's make a mess of this. Let's rush forward. There is glory to be had. There are opportunities in charging early. There are substantial risks, but I was I don't know. I just got a little bit into the spirit, and I did the thing that I thought might be more fun as opposed to the thing that might be more tactical. So anyway, I charge those ghouls out. Now I know he has fanatics, and so I move forward, and his fanatics come out when I get 8 inches away. One of the fanatics zips straight through my unit, which is preferable, really. I don't want to stomp on top of them. The one zipping through, he only manages to kill one ghoul. That's fine. Then I complete my charge, and I end up landing on the other fanatic, which is not great. So I go and I cause another 4 wounds to that unit. You can see I got that big, diorama in the middle, that big scenic base of all the dwellers beyond coming out of that pit there. So it makes it real inconvenient for pulling casualties. So I've just marked that die to say that 3 of those models have been perished. Now, again, I knew that these fanatics were coming, but my thinking was that I can complete this charge and I can use my magic phase to regrow them, and I'm still in a pretty good position. I'm not actually touching that hedge that those Savage Orcs are on right now, so I'm not going to take the penalty for... I'm not going to get like the -1 to hit that would normally take for attacking over a hedge, and so it's looking reasonably well. So I didn't go in position. I couldn't overrun into contact with those Night Goblins. So that is where I deployed those guys during my charge. In further moves, I just kind of angled my skeletons over a little bit. I want to be able to see people to go and blast them with the ruby ring. I may have been just shy of being able to walk into that building this round. I need to make a normal move. I don't think I can make a march move and go into the building, so that's what I ended up doing. I would have rather have gone into that building so that I didn't get splattered by that fanatic in later turns. We'll go on to the magic phase. I start off with the ruby ring. He lets that go through, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. I go and I put 1 or 2 wounds on that troll over there. But the big news is that I don't get the invocation off. He shuts that down, which, that makes sense. That was the smart play. But it makes things a little bit more difficult for those ghouls. I go and I start the combat phase with my Wolf Riders. I don't roll fantastically. First off, he passes his fear test, which isn't super helpful. Second off, I only managed to kill 1 of those Wolf Riders, which is a little disappointing. In return, he goes and kills 2 back, which is about what you'd expect, but that means that we have tied this combat, which is, like I said, it's a little bit disappointing. It's not so far off of the averages, but it means that these Wolf Riders are almost certainly going to eventually kill off those dire wolves and take control of that flank. The ghouls do a little bit worse than I was hoping for. I do kill 3 Savage Orcs, which isn't terrible. He's got a lot of attacks back. He does kill 3 of my ghouls. That does mean, however, that he is going to lose the combat, and he goes and he fails his break test, which is great. I don't like the idea of trying to chase him because I think there's a real possibility I'm going to catch that giant unit of goblins in the flank, which is probably going to be a real problem. So I opt to reform instead. So the Savage Orcs run off, I let them go, I taunt them and jeer them a little bit, and I go and reforce that inevitable charge of the Troll and the Night Goblins. Sure enough, here come the Night Goblins, so they charge in. Fortunately, the Troll fails Stupidity, which is super convenient, and so he just stumbles around and doesn't get to join in the fun. In further moves, like I said, his Troll just kind of stumbles up, and his Savage Orcs do rally. They go into just a rank of 4 and 3 and return to face my lines again. The Night Goblin Fanatic just barely misses my bunker unit, so he just sort of whirls off to the left of those guys. In combat, the dire wolves all die off. They do manage to kill 1 more Wolf Rider, but then they get killed in return. My opponent reforms them to face where the action is happening. So the Night Goblins pass their fear test, which doesn't help. And disappointingly, I only kill 3 Night Goblins from that unit, but I do put a bunch of attacks into his war boss, and I come real close to killing him. I put 2 wounds on him. He's got 1 wound left. The goblins do go and kill 3 of my ghouls, which means that 2 more ghouls are going to crumble, so that unit's really hurt. I need to try to use Invocation of Nehek to get those guys back up to fighting strength if they're going to last. At the end of the combat phase, the goblins actually go and do a combat reform to move his war boss off to the edge so that he will get less ghoul attacks in the rounds to come. So he's trying to get him a little bit further away from the fighting. He's still in contact. This is a totally legal move. But now it means that only 1 ghoul can attack him, whereas before I could have attacked him with 2. Okay, so it's my turn again, and like I said, my skeleton bunker goes and they take possession of that tower in the middle of the table. It's the magic phase, and I go and I start with the ruby ring, try and draw out the spell dice, which of course isn't going to work. I do go and blast that troll into oblivion, so at least I'm not going to lose this game without getting any victory points whatsoever. So the troll is gone, which does help. But my invocation is dispelled again, so it means those ghouls are in trouble. But fortunately, in the hand-to-hand combat phase, the night goblins do go and fail their fear test. The ghouls go and they don't manage to pull down that Goblin Warboss, which is a little disappointing. They do kill off 3 goblins themselves, but then these goblins, I don't know, they might fight better when they're afraid because they kill off all 5 of the remaining ghouls, and so they have just cleared the board. So that was my main combat unit, so this game might more or less be over. I still have a couple things I can try. You know, I've lost 200 points here. Well, actually 200 plus 40. So I've lost 240 points between the direwolves and the ghoul unit. So it's going to be real hard for me to do much of anything after this point. However, with a few bad panic tests, I might still be able to pull something out here. I still have that ruby ring. I still have a pretty good defensive position. So I'm going to hang in here and see if I can't catch a break. This is kind of the nice thing about Warhammer Fantasy. For some games, like for example Star Wars Legion and stuff like that, you can get really far behind on victory points, and very early on you can determine, okay, it's mathematically impossible for one person to win, and you can just kind of call the game. For Warhammer Fantasy, there's always, you know, you can usually see some series of events that can happen that can pull the game back in your favor. You know, some unlucky leadership tests, some fortunate moves, some fortunate spells. So that may or may not be a good thing. If you're winning, then you think, I really want to seal the deal here. I don't want to be victim of bad luck. But if you're losing, then it kind of keeps you in the game a little bit more. And of course, it lets you play through the entire game. It means you don't, end up quitting like, 3 rounds in. But that said, it's usually the case where if you're looking for a set of circumstances that has to come together in order to get you back in the fight, that's usually when luck really turns on you and just hammers you into the ground to make sure that doesn't happen. But anyway, back to my opponent's turn. Those Savage Orcs, they're not frenzied anymore, but they go to charge the building to try and clear out the last of my undead that have occupied that. His Fanatic just kind of wanders around in the middle of the field. And in the combat phase, so if you're not familiar with the building assault rules, what you do is you choose 10 of your guys, if they're normal infantry, to do the fighting. And so I've got 11 guys in that building, and so I choose everyone except my Necromancer. I don't need him getting killed off. And the only thing that counts for combat resolution is casualties. And the guy who's charging the building, he's never going to break. The guys in the building can break, and then they can occupy the building if they flee. But of course, I'm never going to flee. I'm only going to take casualties because of, I'm going to crumble extra guys due to casualties, and then everyone gets separated at the end of the combat, so he moves an inch back. But anyway, in the event, I managed to kill off 2 orcs, which is pretty good, and he kills off 3 skeletons, which means that 1 more skeleton is going to crumble away due to combat resolution. He backs off 1 inch to regroup, and I am happy that I'm still alive. So it's my turn. I can't charge out or anything like that. I could try to back out of the building, but I don't particularly love that idea. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to stay tight. I am going to use Invocation of Nehek. I am going to regrow all the damage that I took in that last combat, which is nice. I am going to have the Ruby Ring dispelled. That's really the dangerous spell for my opponent right now, because his Wolf Riders are hurt, I can wipe them out. The Savage Orcs are hurt, I can at least cause a panic test, which they're vulnerable to now that they're no longer frenzied. So things can go badly for my opponent with a good set of rolls, but he knows to dispel that ring and try and take that away from me. So my opponent knows at this point that he can just hang back and he can win on points. So he's not interested in really charging anything. So all he's going to do is he's going to move his wolf riders back a little bit, and he's going to have everyone just keep my undead in that tower because he doesn't want to risk charging in those night goblins because they are night goblins. They might not do so great. And the savage orcs are at a point now where they're low enough where they're also in a little bit of a danger. So he's just going to hold still for this movement phase. His night goblin fanatic just kind of wanders around in the middle of the table, and it's back to my turn. In my turn, I managed to get the ruby ring through, and I managed to kill off one savage orc, which is not really getting me close enough to what I need to do. I was hoping that I could kill enough to force a panic test. They would fail their panic test, flee through the wolf riders, cause them to have a panic test, and then they can flee, and then everybody's happy. I'm back in the game. Didn't happen though. Didn't occur. Like I said, it takes a lot of a nice sequence of luck for me to make this happen, and that's I'm reaching here is what I'm saying. Anyway, my opponent does realize that those wolf riders are not in a fantastic spot, so he's going to want to move them. Not only are they closer to the board edge where they could run away, but yeah, the savage orcs it's very possible for them to flee through them, which wouldn't be good. Anyways, back to my opponent's turn again, and again, he's not interested in engaging, but his night goblins managed to go and fail animosity. So they are going to charge that building whether my opponent likes it or not. And so in they go, and we're going to have a fight here. His wolf riders have determined that they do not want to be by that board edge or close to those savage orcs. The savage orcs getting killed off, that will also cause a panic test, so that's all bad news, so they're going to take off in that direction. In the combat phase, he does not send his warboss into the fight. He doesn't want to risk losing that guy because, of course, he's really the only source of good leadership in this army right now, and he's on 1 wound. So it wouldn't take much bad luck for him to get killed off. So 3 goblins go and get killed by the skeletons, which is okay, I guess. But the goblins go and they kill 5 skeletons, which definitely hurts. And so 2 more crumble. So I have very few guys left here. I think these guys may have even failed fear test. And they just kind of went bananas, killing off a bunch of those orc skeletons. So I'm left with just my skeleton champion, my 1 orc skeleton, and my musician and my necromancer. That is the entirety of my force right now. But the combat does end, the goblins get pushed back 1 inch, and it's my turn. So, those goblin wolf riders, there's only 3 of them, that's only 3 toughness 3 wounds I have to take care of. I am going to go and I'm going to fire my ruby ring. I just need to either kill them off or make them fail a panic test, and I can at least get some points for them. I go ahead and I get it was like 4 hits on these guys. But he passed 3 of his armor saves, which is rough, so he only loses 1 guy, and he passes his panic test anyway. So those wolf riders are not concerned. I'm not getting points for those guys. And unfortunately, my incantation is dispelled, and so I don't get to regrow any more skeletons. So, it's my opponent's round again. He's going to go and charge in with those night goblins once more. They're going to charge into that building. They did so well last round. He's going to make sure that he polishes off my few stragglers left alive. But he doesn't roll anywhere near as well as he did last round. He only manages to kill off, I think he probably kills off 2 skeletons. So there's only 1 skeleton left on the unit. But I do go and I manage to kill 1 goblin in return. I'm thinking that my opponent gets a little sense of the dramatic as well, and so he actually puts his warboss into the fight, and so we're going to square off my necromancer against his warboss. It's possible that this isn't what happens, and I'm remembering this wrong, but I think he ends up putting 1 wound on my necromancer, which is pretty lucky, and then probably 1 skeleton dies and 1 night goblin dies, which means I crumble away 1 more skeleton. The combat ends. So I am left with my necromancer and a skeleton. So that, I didn't get completely destroyed. I've got those guys there in the tower. He of course doesn't lose anything. So I do have my leader and his bodyguard still theoretically alive by the end of this whole thing. But that was rough. So the game ends at that point, and I have lost. That was a pretty big stomping. Not the most glorious start to the campaign. But I've got another game lined up against my other opponent. We'll see if I do a little better. And yeah, it was a lot of learning experiences. I think those dire wolves, I think I've been misusing them. I think they really are not a troop type that goes out and kills anything. I think they are really redirectors. I think I should be using them a little bit more along those lines in the future. Maybe even sacrificing them to get those fanatics out of the way. Certainly, if a unit can't defeat Goblin Wolf Riders, they are probably not something that has any place in charging forward to try and eat things. So I think I learned that. I think the bunker unit is a lot more successful than having the necromancer and the ghoul unit. The ghoul unit, I got a little ambitious with them. They had a chance for glory. It didn't quite pan out, but I feel like they did okay. You know, it wasn't a complete stomping. I think there were some moments where things could have shaken out a little bit better. My opponent played it real well, though. That is for sure. He had nice maneuvers throughout, and he comes away with the victory. But anyway, stay tuned. I will try and get the next battle report out as soon as I can, and we'll see how things go in the Deathfang Valley Warhammer 8th Edition Fantasy Escalation campaign. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.